All right, let's turn to the bowl season now, second half of the college football bowl season. We'll start with Tuesday, December 28th. That's when these games are taking place. We'll start with the Birmingham Bowl, pretty good one. Houston Cougars and Auburn Tigers in this matchup here. We've got right now Auburn rather, in this one, 3-point favorites, 51 and a half the total in this one. This line has stood pat, but the more I read about this bowl game, the more I'm wondering who exactly is going to play for Auburn in this game. You look at their situation that's unfolding. Of course, the big news, Bo Nix coming out with a statement on social media saying, I'm entering the transfer portal. I'm not returning to Auburn. And it's not just him. There's a slew of players that are bolting this Auburn program and going to the transfer portal, 7, in fact, including Bo Nix, including their stud running back, Tank Bigsby, key players on defense at all 3 levels, key offensive tackle, also opting out, or not opting out, but, going into the transfer portal, leaving the program. So it really leaves you wondering, who's going to be in the game here? Who's going to suit up? Who's going to be on the field for the Auburn Tigers for this game against Houston? It also makes you wonder, do they really care about it all that much? I mean, when you're seeing, the sort of the writing on the wall, and you're seeing players going into the transfer portal, leaving the program left and right, that's not really a good sign either for Brian Harsin, to be honest with you. I mean, these are guys that I know he inherited a lot of them after Gus Malzahn departed, but nevertheless, it's never a good sign for a head coach when he's got so many key players, both sides of the football, bailing right now prior to the bowl game, and bailing isn't leaving the program. Like, they're not coming back to Auburn next year, any of these guys. So that leaves you wondering how things are going to go here. And, for the Houston Cougars, Conor, and I've seen this in years past with Houston, a year where they played Florida State, they got fired up to play a power conference team, and they got up for the game. The team they played that year, Florida State, wasn't as excited about the game. And sure enough, that was one of the years that Tom Herman, that's going years ago. Tom Herman was coaching Houston at the time. And I remember Houston won. It was one of my big bowl bets that year. Houston plus the points against Florida State. I think it was the Peach Bowl. And Houston won outright. And Florida State just didn't really care all that much about the game compared to Houston. I'm kind of getting that sense here. I mean, you got guys leaving this Auburn program. I think you got a Houston team that coming into this game, even off the AAC championship game loss to Cincinnati, I think they come into this game, Dana Holgerson's team, with an incentive to say, hey, let's measure up here. SEC team, Auburn. They got a good enough defense, can run the football. Clayton Tune, I thought, played a solid season at the quarterback spot for this Auburn team. It's probably going to be TJ Finley, you'd assume, at quarterback for Auburn, because he was the guy when Bo Nix didn't start down the stretch. So, and he's a guy that can play good at times, and he certainly had a decent game against Alabama, but it was really Alabama's offensive struggles that gave Auburn that chance to win that game in the Iron Bowl, not so much that the offense was moving the football. So, early lean is Houston here. I'm certainly now, after reading what I'm reading, Conor, about Auburn, I'm really not rushing to lay a field goal with them in this bowl game. What's your thoughts? Cougars, Tigers.
Yeah, obviously, I think Auburn has more talent, from what they get, always recruiting, than this Houston team. But Houston, a good school. They lost to Cincinnati. Obviously, they lost to Texas Tech. We talked about they ripped through all those games, won all those. They got Tune. I think they'll be up for this one. You mentioned it, years ago when they won. To me, this is a Houston game here. Who's going to play for Auburn? This is all you got to read before the stuff. Because to me, I don't, there's just no bet on Auburn. To me, I'll look at Houston, but I got to dig into everything and who's going to play, offense and defensive wise. But it sure seems like this team doesn't want to be here. But it's still Auburn. You got to think of that, and they're still laying 3 points. But I'd only look at Houston, and I'd look under. Obviously, Auburn, whoever's going to play, this team wasn't a team that lit it up on offense. Their defense was pretty good down the stretch. We saw in some of those games, and of course in the Iron Bowl against the Alabama team that can score. So I lean under the 51.5 just off early here. And yeah, I look at Houston. I think they're going to be up for this one at least. They had a good year. I mean, they lost to Cincinnati 35-20, but respectable. So yeah, I'd lean their way, but I'd lean under. Just looking at everything right now.
Yeah, this could be an under. I could see that. Certainly that makes sense from a total standpoint in this game. Now, certainly strength of schedule advantage lies clearly with Auburn. That's the one thing. I mean, Houston, they played Texas Tech on a neutral early in the season. They got beaten in that game. You look at against bowl teams. SMU was a good win for them. Memphis was a pretty solid win for them. And then Cincinnati, they 35-20. So really their two toughest games, they lost straight up in ATS. But
Yeah.
again, which were the Cincinnati game and the Texas Tech game. But nevertheless, I mean, you look at this situation for Auburn and you see Nick's out, Bigsby out, you see key players both sides of the ball going to the transfer portal. And it's hard to envision with them already announcing they're going in the transfer portal that they're going to play in I can't see them playing in this bowl game. That the fact that
No
they're
way.
saying we're out here and going into the transfer portal, if they're not going to be back next year at Auburn, why the fuck would they play in a bowl game here? Birmingham Bowl for a program that, kind of wants to be in bigger bowl games than this one. To me, there's no sense in them suiting up, and I'm not expecting them to. So I think there is a case here for Houston. But again, keep an eye on the situation unfolding with Auburn closer to a kickoff here